I cannot believe it's finally happening. Obsidian is finally making another Fallout game. So in case you haven't heard, amid the mass Xbox layoffs and studio closures that have been going on, it was reported by Jason Schreier that Obsidian has been handed the reins to a brand new Fallout game, and that the newest game that they were currently working on, Avowed 2, has been shelved in order to complete this new Fallout game. And without a doubt, this is some of the biggest news that has come out of these Xbox layoffs and studio divestments. I mean, there's been such a big ask from the gaming community for Obsidian to follow up one of the all-time classic RPGs and one of the greatest Fallout games ever made, Fallout New Vegas. And now Obsidian is finally getting a chance to do something that they have always wanted to do, which is get a follow-up to Fallout New Vegas. And don't get me wrong, I am incredibly excited for this, but I'm also pretty worried. It goes without saying, but I think Obsidian is one of my favorite RPG developers of all time. Time and time again, I credit them for getting me into RPGs in the first place. One of the first games I ever played that was an RPG was Outer Worlds 1 way back in 2019. And that world, the gameplay, the story just got me hooked into what RPGs are all about and what basically set me on the journey of where I am today, covering and loving RPGs like I do. And so I credit Obsidian a lot for getting me into the genre. But their last two games that came out last year, Avowed and of course Outer Worlds 2, were by and large commercial failures. Not only did they not sell well, Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 by many were not considered that good of games. Now, last year I reviewed both of these games. I reviewed Avowed when it first came out in February, and then 6 months later again. And then I also reviewed Outer Worlds 2 when it came out in October. And I was pretty negative on Avowed. I didn't think it was that good. I was pretty disappointed by it, but I really enjoyed Outer Worlds 2. I thought it was shockingly great. I didn't think it would be very good because Avowed wasn't very good, and this game came out the same year Avowed did, but Outer Worlds 2 actually blew me away in a lot of ways. The world, the reactivity, the gameplay, all really kind of meshed with me well, and I did leave 2025 considering Outer Worlds 2 to be one of my favorite games I had played that year. But what this does tell me is that there are some deep inconsistencies in the way Obsidian has been developing their RPGs as of late. There are things that both Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 do that are deeply flawed, and if Obsidian isn't careful, it could absolutely bleed into this new Fallout game. So today, let's sit down and answer the question, can modern Obsidian recreate the magic that they had with Fallout New Vegas? If you're into what I do here, if you're into reviews of games, as well as a deep dive look at the industry, consider giving this video a like and subscribing as well. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, I have to start with something trivial here, but it's also something that is deeply rooted in what Fallout is as a franchise, and that is the graphics as well as the overall art design. Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 were made in Unreal Engine 5, and Fallout up until this point has been made in the Creation Engine. There are certain things that the Creation Engine can do that Unreal Engine 5 just simply cannot. One major one is physics. Objects have their own physics in the Creation Engine, and you can pick them up and move them around in ways that is super unique to the Creation Engine. Unreal Engine 5 does not have this deep level of a physics engine built in. But more importantly, Obsidian's art style for both Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed has been remarkably cartoony. The worlds are incredibly vibrant, and the character models are distinctly cartoony in a way. Fallout never has and cannot be like that. I know this is something that's honestly pretty trivial, but I can't help but be slightly concerned at what Avowed and Outer Worlds 2's art direction look like. If we're being frank here, it is probably safe to say that this new Fallout game is going to be developed in Unreal Engine 5. That's crazy to say, but it is the truth because that is what Obsidian has been using for their games for their past couple of games, and their pipelines are created for Unreal Engine 5. New Vegas was a bit of an anomaly with the fact that Bethesda felt like they needed something in between Fallout 3 and Skyrim, so they went to Obsidian and was like, here are all the assets of Fallout 3, please make something. And that's how Obsidian came up with New Vegas. But this is different here. There's not much of a crunch timeline for this. Xbox is just going, hey, we need you to make a Fallout game. It has been far too long, and Fallout is far too popular of a franchise for us not to have anything ready to go. Use your existing technologies and your existing pipelines to make something. And for Obsidian, that is Unreal Engine 5. But I think what's a little bit more concerning here is the fact that both Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 are incredibly cartoony. Their worlds are vibrant, and that is unique to both Avowed with Aora as well as the Outer Worlds 2. But at the same time, I have to be a little bit cautious here. Fallout has always been dark and gritty and never really has any cartoony assets or cartoony, models or character designs or anything like that. And I think Obsidian's pipelines lend themselves to those cartoony designs with how they've been using Unreal Engine 5's graphics engine. Now, what I will say is that a lot of this is art design in a way. Obsidian can absolutely say, hey, what we're doing here with the Outer Worlds and with Avowed isn't going to work for Fallout, and we need to come up with a new art design that matches what Fallout is all about. But at the end of the day, if the rumors are to be believed, Obsidian is wanting to leverage their existing games as well as their existing pipelines, so I'm a little nervous about what this Fallout game is actually going to look like. Fallout is a massive franchise and people have expectations with it. If they see a game that looks cartoony or not true to what Fallout is, I think people are going to be upset about that, and I think it's absolutely something that needs to be kept in mind. But beyond just the graphics and the actual art design itself, I am nervous about Obsidian's overall technological advancement and how they create their games. Obsidian, in my opinion, is a very fringe AAA developer. Both Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 were not fully open world, they were more open zone, and both games were also much tighter in focus and story with not a lot of exploration elements or sandbox elements. I understand that New Vegas was the exact same way, but there are still super cool and unique points of interest. The faction quests were some of the best in the franchise, and there was still the sense of scale that the Mojave had that I think both their newer games have been lacking. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Outer Worlds 2 for what it is, and I think its world design is much better than that of Avowed's, but even so, I found their worlds to be technologically limiting, especially in the cities and towns. New Vegas being small and sectioned off by a lot of loading screens might have passed in 2010, especially with the technological limitations that were given to Obsidian, but it absolutely will not pass now. Even Bethesda themselves has been getting a lot of shit for their lifeless cities and their incredibly small cities for what the lore accurate size is actually supposed to be. I mean, I think of Starfield, where cities like Neon and Aquila and New Atlantis don't live up to the grandiose that the lore wants you to believe they are. The lore wants you to believe these are massive cities. New Atlantis is the capital of the UC, and Aquila is the capital of the Freestar Collective, and Neon is this dark, grungy, undercity kind of vibe, but that isn't really portrayed in Starfield at all, and that's largely due to the technological limitations of the creation engine. Now, Unreal Engine 5 doesn't have those limitations, but Obsidian still doesn't make their cities like that. The majority of their cities in both the Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed felt really lifeless to me. They weren't very big at all. They were mostly just a hub for you to get your quests. NPCs weren't moving around. They weren't going about their daily activities. There was just no life to the cities. And I think Fallout lends itself to that liveliness. I mean, at the end of the day, if you watch, the Fallout TV show, or if you even look at Diamond City in Fallout 4, there was a little bit of a sense of liveliness to it. I didn't love Diamond City, but I did appreciate what it was trying to do in the environmental storytelling that was within it. To have it be like in the middle of Fenway Park was just so Fallout and just lends itself to that franchise so much. And I don't think the Outer Worlds 2 nor Avowed have had any cities or towns that I think lend themselves to their respective franchises. They are all just kind of generic to me, and I'm scared that Fallout is going to have that same treatment done by Obsidian because I haven't seen anything better from them. But look, as much as I can gripe about the technological advancements and what Obsidian uses to be, a AAA game developer, there are certain things that they just do that are incredible. And I think the number one thing that they do that is quite frankly amazing is the stories and quests that they tell. Obsidian's stories are still very impactful and well done. I felt as though Avowed's story was the best aspect of that game, and I think Outer Worlds 2's story was absolutely fantastic. It had so many twists and turns, difficult decisions, and reactive elements that I felt were classic Obsidian and reminded me a lot of New Vegas. With the insane amount of lore behind a franchise like Fallout, I have no doubt that Obsidian is going to build on their strong story elements. One small critique I do have though is that both Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, I felt as though their companions and their companion quests were a little lackluster. They weren't bad or anything, but I feel like they could have had more to them, more depth, more moral ambiguity, and just make the companions in general feel more interesting. One thing that I will say that absolutely works though is Outer Worlds 2's gameplay. This is an aspect that I would like to hope goes really well for this new Fallout game, but one that I'm not 100% sold on. The reason being, I have completely different feelings on Obsidian's gameplay design with the two games they released just last year. Avowed had, I think, fun moment-to-moment gameplay, but lacked in good progression, weapon choice, and build crafting that made playing through it a little bit of a slog in my opinion. But Outer Worlds 2 had some of the most fun gameplay I've experienced in an RPG in a long time. The different types of loot, the build crafting, the various different gameplay styles, skill checks, the flaw system, it just all made for a fantastic experience through the entire game. Now, if you ask me, I hope that Obsidian builds on the Outer Worlds 2's gameplay intricacies way more than it does build on Avowed's. I didn't like the zone-based loot in Avowed. I much preferred the scaled loot of the Outer Worlds 2. And I also think that the weapons, the build crafting, and the flaw system in the Outer Worlds 2 was just way better than anything you could get in Avowed. Now, I do understand that the Outer Worlds as a franchise is much more wacky and much more zany than a Fallout game. While Fallout is satirical, it's not exactly comedy focused, which I think the Outer Worlds tries to be. So I think there's just certain gameplay features that Obsidian just can't add, like the flaw system. But I do think that in terms of like weapons and build crafting and progression and things like that, I really hope they lean into what they did with the Outer Worlds 2, because like I said, it is one of the more fun first-person RPG experiences I've had in a very long time. And so look, with all this being said, with the gameplay, the story elements, the technology that Obsidian has to offer, I've got to be honest, I feel pretty mixed about the news. On one hand, I recognize that Obsidian made the best first-person Fallout game of all time. Yes, I absolutely mean that. And I understand the potential of what they can do because they did it all those years ago. And senior talent like Josh Sawyer is still in the building, the man who headed New Vegas all those years ago. But on the other hand, though, Avowed to me was a complete dud. I did not enjoy it nearly as much as I thought it would. I thought it would be Obsidian's Skyrim, but it lacked the scope, scale, depth, or breadth of something like Skyrim. Outer Worlds 2, I was and still am much more positive about. The gameplay, progression, and story are all top-notch and very good in a lot of ways. But technologically, Outer Worlds 2 still feels pretty dated. It has lifeless cities, small semi-open worlds, and an art design and graphics pipeline that just doesn't match what I think a Fallout game needs to have. At the end of the day, I will remain cautiously optimistic about this new Fallout game. I mean, to hear the words Obsidian is making another Fallout game is something that I don't think I ever would have thought could ever happen. New Vegas is such a classic in so many ways, from the 18-month development pipeline to reusing Fallout 3's assets and flipping it, to making a story that has so much lore and so much depth behind it that many people consider it to be the best Fallout game of all time and one of the best RPGs of all time. And I stand by all of what I just said. And I also don't care what people think. I think The Outer Worlds is a fantastic franchise. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. I think a lot of people consider it to be like a discount Fallout in many ways, but in space. But I personally love it. I might have a little bit bias because it's what I first started with and what got me into RPGs, but I truly do think The Outer Worlds 2 is very intricate and very detailed when it comes to its RPG systems, but it just feels technologically limited. And that's what I think scares me the most about this Obsidian rendition of Fallout. Gamers do not expect the same things that they did in 2010. They expect there to be scale, they expect to be size, but also they expect to have intricate detail across that vastness. Look at a game like Crimson Desert, for example. I know that game has nothing to do with Fallout. It's a completely different genre. It is a completely different setting. But to see what Pearl Abyss did with Crimson Desert, to have the size of what they created, but also have it be so intricately detailed with points of interest, various things to find and discover. People expect that now. People expect that with games like Witcher 3 or Cyberpunk. It's there in those games as well. And I think Obsidian lacks that in many ways. I don't know if Obsidian is scared to fully dive into AAA, but Xbox does charge AAA prices for their games that I think are distinctly AA. The Outer Worlds 2 is a smaller, tighter experience. It feels AA. Avowed was the same way, and yet they're being priced at $70, $80 in some cases, and gamers are being forced these AAA prices to what I think are AA games, and I don't want that to happen to Fallout here with Obsidian. I want them to give it their all. I want them to expand their technology pipelines. I want to see a little bit more vastness. I want to see a little bit more scale, because I think that's what's expected now, especially after a game like Fallout 4. And I hope they can deliver while also delivering with their quests and what they're known for, with their faction quest line, their intricacies, their different choice and consequences that they make. I want them to deliver with that as well. But at the end of the day, only time will tell, and all what we can do right now is wait and see. Either way, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to hear everything y'all have to say down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on Obsidian making another Fallout game. Are you straight up hyped? You don't care what's going to happen. You just want this game in your hands. You're going to play it regardless. Or are you like me and you've seen some of the missteps and some of the things that maybe Obsidian hasn't done the best with their past couple of RPGs, and you're excited because you love Fallout and you love what that franchise offers and you love what Obsidian did all those years ago, but you're curious to see what they can do now, today, with this modern Obsidian. I want to hear everything y'all have to say down in the comments below. Again, if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button, consider subscribing. I'm out.